All right, guys, I saw this video and I thought we'd react to it. Let's watch it.
War Thunder is today's sponsor. Barrows is widely regarded as one of RuneScape's perfect updates, but on launch, it was the exact opposite. Let's explore why Barrows and its rewards were some of the most hated content for many of the game's players.
You're telling me that something new that came out, people didn't like it? Surprising. Real surprising.
Especially its wealthiest ones, and the simple fix that made it perfect. Our story begins all the way back in 2005. Jagex is just about to release an update that they teased over a year ago, the Barrows minigame.
Yeah.
Deep in the swamps of Mauritania is a gravesite where
I remember when the Mauritania stuff first started coming out. I remember Priest in Peril coming out. I remember going there. I remember doing Nature Spirit for the first time and seeing people use the bless thing all around the world. You'd walk over to the duel arena and there'd be people there blessing and charging people to bless them and all of those things. It was good times, dude. Just absolutely excellent. I remember being in the swamp and getting my food ruined by ghasts and things. Good times, just good times.
6 ancient warriors, the Barrows brothers, are resting. Digging into each gravesite with a spade allows you to break into their
hammers,
tombs
dual wield
and
for the
defeat
first time
5
ever.
of them, until you come across one tomb that, instead of having a brother, has a secret entrance. If you enter it, you're placed into a maze of tunnels, where you'll encounter the final brother. In the center of this maze is a reward chest, which you can open to obtain armor pieces from the brothers you've defeated. This armor would become the new best gear in the game, and could make you rich.
Legitimately game-changing gear. I can't think of a single set that is more universally used by people at all levels in the game as Darok's set. Getting 1 HP and then hitting fat max numbers is something that everybody learns how to do in this game. It made the rock cake and the locator orb super useful. It makes Nightmare Zone an incredible XP rate. Just Barrows content is some of the best content in the game. I can't imagine a world where people don't like it. I think Barrows are super fun to do. It's such an accessible PVM content that can make you money, and it's just great. The boss fights are really simple. You can gear up for it very easily, and you can just make tons of money at it. You only 20 minutes learning curve, and you've got it, if that.
Assuming you could put your morals aside.
Am I really gonna defile this grave for money?
Yeah.
Of course I am!
For gear,
Today,
especially.
Barrows is seen as a relatively easy challenge. Baby's first boss type content, but you'll soon see that on release, Barrows was the game's hardest and most punishing content yet. This is Billy. He's been playing.
People forget that back in the day, the gear sets were not what they are today. Walking around with a warrior, a berserker helm or a warrior helm and full rune, a dragon longsword, and a granite shield was super duper common. Having a dragon chain body, dragon square shield, dragon legs, those things were extremely difficult to come by. A dragon med helm now costs, I don't know, 64K, something like that. Back in the day, I mean, you had to be able to get them. It was a different time. People didn't know what they were doing. There was significantly less players at higher level content. So because of that, the markets were just shifted extremely in one direction. There wasn't a whole lot of people who were over the age of 15, 18 playing RuneScape at that time. So there wasn't a whole lot of people who could really commit themselves to an extremely long grind, a couple day grind to get an item and sell it. So the people who could do that were at an extremely high advantage. I mean, just absolutely nuts. Putting together one of the books for Horrors of the Deep or After Horrors of the Deep was super difficult. You had to get those pages from Clue Scrolls, and they would sell for 300K plus, and 300K was a huge amount of money. Law runes cost 1.2K. Everything was nuts back then. So Barrows was just something that most people dreamed about doing, and I can't tell you how cool it was to come back as a player in OSRS and just be able to go and do Barrows, be able to get really good gear, be able to afford a whip. Those things are amazing.
Playing RuneScape for a while. He's a member, has around 80 combat, and knows a fair bit about the game. So Barrows releases, Billy gears up in his best equipment for all 3 combat styles, fills up his inventory with food and a few prayer potions, and is on his way to Barrows. For most players, the starting area would be Canifis. Now, Billy doesn't have an ectophile, fairy rings don't exist yet, and he doesn't have access to the Canifis teleport on the ancient spellbook. To get that, he'd need to complete the Desert Treasure quest, a quest that back in the day would be considered endgame extremely difficult content. So, for Billy and most other players, his journey would begin by walking to Canifis from East Varrock Bank. So he gets to Canifis, takes the underground shortcut behind the bar, and is placed halfway through the swamps of Mauritania. As he continues south, ghasts begin attacking him, and by the time he makes it to the swamp Bodhi and out of the swamp, half of his food has been rotted by the ghasts. A minute or two of walking, and
this is the thing that's so amazing about RuneScape, is that all the items just become extremely useful in the right use case. Getting your, is it called a druid's pouch? The little pouch that you fill up with mushrooms and everything. That is super important if you're going to walk through the swamps. Without that, you're going to lose all of your food, so you have to have it. These teleports that we have now have spoiled us in some kind of ways and made us forget all of the things that you can do in this game. And it's just nuts, man. If you don't have these teleports, I mean, think about that journey. You're going to get to Barrows, and you're going to be completely depleted already.
He finally makes it to Barrows, and he forgot his spade. He could just grab one from this little house and...
Dude, that's so real. How many times have you forgotten a rope or a spade? Be honest with me. How many times have you gotten to a place, you're ready to do the thing, and you forgot that you needed a rope or a spade?
Front of Barrows, but that didn't actually exist yet.
Nope.
So it's back to Varrock to repeat the whole process. So this time, Billy doesn't forget his spade, he kills a few brothers, and is doing pretty good. But then he gets to Darrock. He runs out of prayer points mid-fight because they're periodically drained whenever you're inside the tombs, and his protect from melee prayer drops. But he figures, I can finish off Darrock with just food, it'll be fine. But he doesn't know that the lower health Darrock is, the higher he hits. So Billy gets hit at 57 and is smacked back to Lumbridge. Since it's 2005, his items aren't sent to a gravestone where he can collect them later. They appear on the ground instantly for anyone to see and steal.
Yeah, dude. I still have this huge aversion to dying in this game for this specific reason. I remember running back to what I would pray would be a dragon longsword and nothing being there. And this was so common. You were on a timer. Even if people didn't pick it up, they would just vanish and they were gone. There was no death's coffer, none of that stuff. It was just, you die, you drop everything but your 3 most valuable items. And I'll tell you what, you don't know what your 3 most valuable items are until you die. And when you die, it's not what you think it is. You keep some random piece of jewelry and some nonsense stuff, dude. Never the thing that you want it to be.
Just like that,
That's
Billy
so
has lost
funny.
pretty much all of his gear and has to start grinding to get it back. Well, he does that.
RuneScape was brutal. People don't understand. I tell them this all the time. This game, back in the day, you had to walk uphill both ways, dude. It was nuts. Truly, though, you really did. I mean, the grind was so difficult to get your gear. Getting money was so much harder. There were none of the money-making methods like there are today. There was much less gold floating around in the world, so selling stuff was much more difficult. Selling stuff on the Grand Exchange was a very a difficult thing to actually make happen. At this point, the Grand Exchange doesn't even exist. You're standing in a bank and just saying, I want to buy a granite mall, and some dude is putting it up and taking it down and putting it up and taking it down, and then he finally puts up a rock hammer and you snatch that thing instead. That's what's going on at this point in time.
Today's sponsor,
you had nothing. You had nothing and you liked it. That's the way it was back in the day. You would try to do hard quests with no gear on because you were afraid of losing the gear. You don't even know, like, the gear's not even for anything at that point. It's just to wear around Varrock.
War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and is available for free on PC.
People say I should skip the ads. This is how they make a living, dude.
Take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters,
Maybe you want to take me out
and
2,500
ships
tanks,
of
planes,
10
helicopters,
major
and ships of 10
nations.
major nations.
Designs range from the
Designs range from
bi-wings and
bi-wings
armored
and
cars
armored
of the
cars of the
1920s to the
1920s,
fighter jets
fighter
and main
jets
battle
and
tanks
main
of
battle
today.
tanks of
Best of
today.
all, they're incredibly detailed, the graphics are realistic, and the sound effects are authentic too. Plus, my favorite part is that the game is so optimized that even those of you with lower end machines can play too. As long as it's not an actual potato, it'll probably work. Join a worldwide community of over 70 million players in epic, breathtaking PvP battles. There's an absolute
It does
wealth
look
of
surprisingly good.
high-quality content to discover, and there's no game better suited for fans of military history. Sign up with the link in my pinned comment or description to get a massive bonus pack available across all platforms for new and returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months. For a limited time only, get 100,000 Silver Lions, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 7 days of premium account time, and so much more. Billy got bored of trying to get his gear back,
course he
and
did,
he
bro.
wants to try a strategy one of his friends told him about, using a cannon. So with
Don't even get me started on how expensive a cannon was back in the day. If you could grind out the money to get a cannon, 450,000 gold. Keep in mind, it's a lot of money back then. A lot of money. 100K was a huge chunk of change back then, at least for me. If you could grind out the money to get a cannon, getting cannonballs meant so much grind. They're so slow to craft. It's ridiculous.
slightly worse gear and a cannon, he makes his way back to Barrows. He puts down the cannon in one of the crypts, wakes
Bro, when Split Bark armor came out, I wanted it so bad. For some reason, I thought it was the coolest armor. I think because you needed a higher defense number to actually use it, so I assumed that it would be better than Mystic armor. So I took so long to get Split Bark armor, and it was trash. It was garbage. It wasn't good. I didn't know how to check my stats, or I knew how to check my stats, but I never really checked my stats to see what was actually better. I wasn't paying much attention back in the day. So man, the magic amulet is real, dude.
picks up a brother and runs behind a coffin so it can attack him. This takes an incredibly long time,
Yeah.
but was a popular strategy for lower level
was safe.
players back then, and is occasionally still seen today. So Billy kills 5 of the brothers and clicks on the tomb that has a hidden tunnel. He enters and has no idea where to go. Most of the doors are locked and his minimap is disabled. He finally makes it to the proper door, solves the puzzle, and opens the chest, and is rewarded for his efforts with a Guthan's helm, one of the brothers' equipment. He sells it to someone in Falador Park for a whopping 10 million gold, because prices
It was so huge back then, dude. It was nuts. Oh my goodness. You were very aware back then, and as I believe that you still are today, this is we'll get into this, but you were very aware back then that there was a gap in the player base. The majority of people, I would say, fell on this side of the gap. And on this side of the gap, it was people who were walking around in rune armor, sometimes adamant armor. They didn't really have a lot of cash. They couldn't really figure out how to play the game super well, but they were playing nonetheless. You know, I had completed Heroes Quest. I was working on Legends Quest when I was younger. I had done Horror of the Deep. I had done a lot of the pre-quests for Desert Treasure, but still, I would say I was on this side of it. I never had best in slot anything. I was never a super good player. I was just logging in every single day, chopping ewes, fishing for lobsters and swordfish. I remember when I could fish for swordfish for the first time. That was huge. Fishing for lobsters at Karamo was such an important thing for me. And then on this side of it, you had people who were wearing this armor that cost so much money that you couldn't figure out how you could possibly ever get that money. And you knew that there was obviously something else going on, but because guides looked like this with text popping up over top of it, if there were any guides for money making, or there was, you know, buy this money making, how to make gold in RuneScape, how to become a RuneScape millionaire, and it was an ebook that you would buy for $10, and it would just have a bunch of stuff about merking in there and all these different things. Just useless, honestly, in the grand scheme of things for someone who didn't already have a giant grasp of it. There was no one introducing you to the gameplay loop in any kind of meaningful way. There were quest guides on RuneHQ and Zybes, but there just really wasn't anything going on. So you knew that there were people out there who knew how to play this game, but you probably weren't one of them. And so it was brutal trying to learn.
Are crazy on the first day and forgets all about the gear he lost. But you may be thinking, where was the sixth brother? No sixth brother ever appeared when he was going through the hidden tunnel maze. Well, today, the last brother will randomly appear when you're going through a door in the maze, or if that doesn't happen, he's guaranteed to appear when you try to open the chest.
Yeah.
But for the first 5 months of Barrows, you'd only encounter the last brother randomly through doors, meaning if you wanted to fight all 6, you'd have to spam a door over and over again until the last one appeared.
I remember this.
This wasn't the
Dude, Magic Shortbow meta was nuts back in the day. Magic Shortbow meta went so hard, brother. Oh my goodness. I remember that. Rune battle axes for their special attack. Old school RuneScape, 2005 RuneScape 2, as it was called back in the day, was a different place, dude. Forgotten metas indeed. You were lucky. If you had beaten Monkey Madness, or if you had a whip, or if you had a Dragon Scimitar, that was a lucky setup, dude. That was such a skilled setup back in the day. People just take it in stride whenever you're coasting through mid game at this point, and remember that was what people were striving
only
for.
Clunky mechanic that existed back then either. You used to be able to use your friends as a safe spot. If you had a friend stand between you and the brother you were fighting.
This is how I beat the boss for, is it Tree Gnome Village? That quest when you're fighting the Khazard Guard or the Khazard Warlord. This is how I beat that boss, by having someone stand between me and them. You can't do that anymore.
While you used a magic or ranged attack, the brother would just sit there until it died. Clunky mechanics aside, it's still for the most part the same Barrows that we know and love today.
Yeah.
So what made it so hated back in 2005? Let me introduce you to the
Quality of
Dragon
life.
Chain Body. Back in 2005, this was the most coveted item in the game. To give you an idea of how in demand it was, it sold for anywhere from 30 to 40 million GP, and the most expensive party hat back then capped out at around 9 million.
Yep.
This is because of one of two factors. First, it's fair.
How do you guys feel about party hats being an every single year thing nowadays? I have a weird love-hate with that. I will say that when I was a kid, the only item that I wanted and I would never be able to get my hands on was a scythe. So a scythe was a Halloween event item that had come out after Halloween event items became tradable, but I never got one. After Halloween items after event items became untradeable. There it is. But I never had one, so I always wanted one. So there is a part of me that loves the fact that you can basically get every single event item that has ever existed for free and very easily in RuneScape nowadays, but they don't mean anything anymore. Not the way they used to. Party hats used to mean something. Halloween masks used to mean something. And it is kind of weird that they don't mean the same thing anymore, especially to new players.
Fairly rare. You can receive one as a drop from the Cowfight Queen at a rate of 1 in 128 kills, but getting even one kill back then was incredibly difficult, as she was the hardest boss in the game at the time. Killing her by yourself was absolutely unheard of too, so you'd need a few friends that you could trust not to scam you out of your split if they got the drop. Or if you're really, really, really patient, you can kill Dust Devils for a chance at receiving.
Basically, every single player back in the day was a scammer, guaranteed. Your friends who were playing with you in middle school, scammers. Let them in your account, your bank account will be gone. They will clean it out. It was just what would happen. Everybody was a scammer. Everybody was doing it. I don't know how to explain this. This was just, we didn't have consciousness back then. We didn't. None of us did.
Receiving one at the absolutely insane rate of 1 in 32,768 kills. Second, it was a huge upgrade over the next best thing, the Rune Plate Body. And actually, let's add a third point. It looks really, really cool.
It does.
The Dragon Chain Body is one of the most nostalgic items in the game for me.
Me
and
too.
I was rocking this thing all the time back when Old School first started up. Anyway, pretty much every chess piece of melee Barrows equipment massively overshadows the Dragon Chain Body. Although you need 10 more defense levels in order to wear them.
And they degrade. I don't have a problem with this concept because it's a tier above and they degrade. The Dragon Chain Body still meant a whole lot. It was a much more difficult thing to get. You could wear it at a lower level. It didn't degrade. That's why dragon chain bodies were so cool. I do remember at the time vaguely sort of having a cognitive dissonance problem where I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that dragon wasn't the best thing anymore. Because there was definitely a time that I remember when dragon was the creme de la creme, the pinnacle of playing RuneScape. Getting Lost City done and being able to wield a dragon dagger P++, that was huge. Being able to wield a dragon mace after Hero's Quest, even though it sucked, was huge. Being able to wield a dragon battle axe was huge. Those things were all super important. Oh my goodness, I just remember the dragon battle axe meta. Do you guys remember the dragon battle axe meta with the special, dude? The special?
They were much less rare and didn't require a group
The
to
nostalgia
obtain.
of this game is strong.
But
I'll give it to
perhaps
them.
the most striking feature of all is, unlike today, they didn't degrade. Today, you can wear a piece of Barrows equipment for about 15 hours worth of combat before it breaks and you need to repair it. On launch, however, you could wear it as long as you wanted and you would never have to repair it.
Bro, that's crazy. That must have been added very quickly after.
This probably doesn't come as much of a surprise, but players were kind of pissed,
I could see that.
especially those that had spent the massive amount of time or money obtaining a dragon chain body. The chain body began crashing just hours after the update launched, and Barrows equipment, despite being brand new and outrageously priced, was still seen as a great deal compared to forking out the insane cost for a dragon chain.
Yep.
As you might expect, RuneScape's forums were soon lit up with complaints about everything I just discussed. Jagex knew pretty much immediately that this time the players were actually right.
Yeah,
Barrows equipment was too powerful for how much easier it was to obtain and how much cheaper it was, especially if you consider the set effects. You know how I mentioned earlier how the lower Darok's health gets, the amount of damage he does also increases? Well, the same effect applies to his armor. If you wear a full set of Darok's equipment, have the other best in slot items for the time, drink a super strength potion, and are on 1 health, you can hit a whopping 68. Not even the Cowfight Queen can hit that high.
Dude.
Players had genuinely never seen numbers like this before.
No.
Plus, by the end of the first week, the entire set costs less than a dragon chain body. Every set has their own different effects. I won't cover all of them, but most of them are pretty useful. Not you, but not even including their effects, they were all now the new
Torax hammers are the coolest of the Barrows weapons. The axe is very close, but Torax hammers are the coolest of the Barrows weapons because you wield 2 of them at one time, and the animation is super cool. Dual wielding did not exist. There is no dual wielding still, and that is just rad. I that's all I'm going to say on it. It's just, it was dope. It was so cool. It was always cool. It will always be cool. It was the coolest of all the weapons.
best armor in the game for every combat style, and nothing else came even close. So on the same day that Barrows released, Jagex would put out a pretty unique news post. They warned players that they would possibly be making some balancing tweaks to the Barrows armor, and recommended anyone interested in buying them from another player to hold off. If they nerfed the armor into the ground, it would crash pretty hard, and they'd have a whole new angry mob on their hands. So they took an approach that had never been done before in RuneScape. A week passed, and the rebalancing changes went live, but to players' surprise, every item's stats remained exactly the same. Instead, now the armor would slowly degrade while being
Okay, so a week later.
used in combat. The stats stay the same while degrading, but after about 15 hours of use, the armor will break and will need to be repaired. It was a simple change, but it not only stabilized the dragon chain body and other items in a similar position, but kept them relevant too. Many players would choose to save their Barrows equipment for more high-stakes scenarios, like bossing or PvP.
You gotta think, I mean, it's at 101k or something to repair each piece of Barrows gear, so if you have a full set plus a weapon, I mean, you're talking 400 plus K in order to repair it. That was a big chunk of change. Maybe not for the people who could actually afford it, but for anyone else, it was massive.
And would use lower tier gear for minigames and Slayer. It was a genius solution that instantly took care of the public's biggest concerns with the update. That change, along with a few minor tweaks, are now why many see Barrows as a...
So people didn't hate Barrows upon release. People hated that their Dragon Chain bodies were rendered useless by Barrows originally, and then they fixed it within a week.
Perfect update, and really one of the best updates ever made to RuneScape. Don't forget to check out War Thunder in the description below to get the massive bonus pack I mentioned earlier. It's free to play on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And after that, check out the video on the right. It's all about content deleted from RuneScape.
Well, that was just an absolutely dope video. I love Colonello. I think he makes really, really cool stuff. Go and like his video if you haven't already, and go and subscribe to him if you haven't already. I don't know. I just absolutely love videos like this. I think that when I was a kid and I would watch Angry Video Game Nerd and learn about all these different Super Nintendo games, all these different Nintendo games, this strikes that same or strokes that same part of me in such a meaningful way. And learning more about RuneScape is always a good thing to do. So that's awesome. So go and like the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.